Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. And thanks, Chris. Good presentation. Good afternoon. I'm Clint Anderson. I'm the president of Mistral Incorporated. Mistral is a U.S. small business offices in Bethesda, Maryland. We analyze capability gaps, typically in the ground tactical force, and then we find solutions that'll bridge that gap. Today I'm going to discuss innovations in mortar accuracy and speed. A lot of companies are out there working on the mortar ammunition to make it more precise. We're focused more on the mortar itself. So taking a dumb piece of steel and making it much smarter and much more useful. The picture on the chart is the U.S. Army Stryker vehicle. It's the Stryker mortar carrier. At the end of the 1991 Gulf War, Chief of Staff of the Army said, we're too slow, we need to deploy faster, we need lighter vehicles, and came up with the concept of the Stryker, what is now the Stryker Brigade. And in the Stryker Brigade, there were a number of mortar carriers. The 120 millimeter mortar that the Army had in its inventory at the time could not be fired on a wheeled chassis. And that's what they fielded for the first two brigades, so that when you had your mobility, but when you went to fire the mortar, you had to stop, take the base plate off the side of the Stryker, pull the tube out of the back of the vehicle, set up your aiming stakes, et cetera, taking you well over 2 minutes to get your mortar set up. And in a fast-moving, lightweight, high-speed situation, you've lost your mobility. Mistral knew that an Israeli company had developed a recoiling mortar system, and it was on the shelf. They could not afford it in the IDF, and they set it aside. We took that mortar and we introduced it to General Dynamics Land Systems, and then worked with GD on the Stryker and with the Army over a course of about 2 years of 10,000 rounds of firing in Yuma to prove that the system would work. So it is a small howitzer-like mortar, and it's the mortar that's in the 360 plus mortar carriers in the Stryker brigades today. Through the use of recoiling mechanisms, the mortar attenuates 140 something metric tons of impact force into about 40, and therefore is able to stay on the vehicle. Since it absorbs it in all directions, the mortar will fire in 360 degrees, so you don't have to point the 6 o'clock of the vehicle like we do with our M113s or M1064 vehicle in the direction of the enemy. Now the enemy can be anywhere around you. You can fire 360 degrees. Next chart. This is my only word chart. The rest of them will be pictures, and I apologize for throwing words in. As a cavalry officer, if it's not a picture, I don't understand it. We developed a system and worked it through a CRADA with Army Armaments Research and Development and Engineering Center to incorporate electric drive units on the mortar, so that and a connectivity to both an INS and a GPS unit, and connectivity to the mortar ballistic fire computer, so that as the mortar, as you typed in the mortar's fire mission, it would lay the mortar for deflection and elevation itself, leaving you to the point where one crew member would be able to load, and then each time you fired, you hit one button, the mortar relays itself, takes out crew error, it takes out the need to readjust bubbles and get things set again on mortars for those of us that understand mortar gunnery, and reduces a lot of effects of fatigue, et cetera, as shown on that chart. It reduced the speed that a crew needed to get accurate mortar fire on target. That system passed its CDD back in 2008 and has been sort of held since then while waiting for funding to be applied to it. Next chart. We had it set up and demonstrated at AUSA 2008 in Washington, D.C. In 2008, Forward Operating Base Keating that battle had just occurred, and members of the Army saw the mortar on display that would fit into the Stryker and said, "Can you mount that mortar on the ground? What can you do to set up a FOB defense mortar that would fire 360 degrees and limit the number of crew interactions. So we took that, the same mortar, put it on the spades that you see there, put the power supply adjacent to it, and connected the mortar ballistic computer to the mortar. Now one operator can punch in the grid coordinates of his target and engage the target. All he needed to do at that point was to feed the mortar ammunition. We had received a contract through CTTSO for CJSOTF-A of 9 of these improved mortars, which we sent to Afghanistan and now occupied special ops forward operating bases in Afghanistan. A year later, the conventional force saw the same mortar, came back on a joint urgent operational needs statement, and we had an order for another 20 that have been sent to Afghanistan with U.S. fire control and everything safety certified. What that electric drive unit and the connectivity to the mortar ballistic computer gives you is the ability to quickly lay, to quickly fire. But in addition to that, the ability to conduct multiple round simultaneous impact. You can now get 3 mortar rounds in the air at different trajectories that would then impact near simultaneous and near in the same spot. So in a platoon of 4 mortars, you can now have the effects of 4 times 3 or 12 mortars on the target. But with that system there fielded and in use today, and lots of good results from it. As the Special Forces guys left forward operating bases and became more mobile, we then got other requests from U.S. Army Special Ops Command and the Naval Special Ops Command for a different system. Next chart, please. We were asked to put an 81 millimeter mortar, recoil mortar, on the back of a Toyota Hilux. And we developed 2 of those systems, and you can see U.S. special operators in the field putting the system through its tests. So there are 2 that have been fielded to USASOC that are in use someplace in the world today. The vehicle can be tarped over. It looks like the ubiquitous Toyota Hilux, beat up white Hilux, and in 1 minute you can have the canvas over off of it. Another minute you can get 10 rounds down range. Your last minute have it packed back up and moving out. So in 3 minutes you can engage the enemy and then get out of the way. Next chart, please. Thank you, sir. A little bit of data on the mortar, we've taken this in the field and run it several times, so we can deploy it in less than 60 seconds with practically untrained troops. The traverse time 25 seconds, your lay, your accuracy, and the data that we have. And there's the 2 trucks that we built for USASOC. Next chart. As we continue to develop mortars, and as the Army continues to develop changes in its operational methodology, there are requirements that are being developed now for airborne forces to land off of the, if they're doing an airfield takedown, to land off of the objective because of area denial, anti-access weapon systems. So the concept of being able to land off and then move rapidly in a light vehicle, as we continue to develop lighter mortars that can attenuate the recoil forces and fire 360 degrees. We have put this together on a M1113 Humvee. It's a 120 millimeter mortar in the cargo compartment of Humvee. You'll note on that and on the Hilux, there's no outriggers or spades or anything that's necessary to stabilize the vehicle. So it gives you the mobility and speed again of having mortars in the force. Next chart. At 360. It's 360, confirmed. Yep. Yes. And if the very last chart that I have, if you come by the booth 506, the Mistral Group booth, I've got videos that I didn't want to put up here that I'll be happy to show you. I'll be happy to show you the video showing firing off the 90-degree side of the Toyota and not throwing the truck over on its side. And there's some capabilities of the Humvee as we develop that system. Again, similar to the Striker mortar that we put together, the same one that we put on the Toyota, just working harder on to attenuate the recoil force. Last chart, please. And then some focus. We think that we're changing the way the United States Army can use mortars and the systems that we put, and giving greater capability to both our special and conventional forces and how they can use mortars. Again, appreciate the time that you've given me today. I'm open for questions, and come visit us in booth 506. Colonel, any additional questions? Thank you, sir.
Sir, I'm going to ask you a difficult question. I don't know how frank you can be. How much pushback are you getting from the legacy, the traditional program, and from pushing this technology?
Bill, not that big of a push. We've briefed the guys at Fort Benning, and of course, Army Armaments Research Development and Engineering Center has developed magazine-loaded mortars, breech-loading mortars as opposed to muzzle-loading mortars. And there's some new technologies that are out there, but we believe that we've got 360 of these in the field today with the Striker. Adding the electric drives to those, should funding become available, and the priority for increasing lethality on Striker moves to the top of the list, we can get those mortars out there and increase the speed, accuracy, and lethality. And for the smaller systems, there is if we can get an 81 millimeter recoil mortar into the ultralight combat vehicle or light reconnaissance vehicle concepts, that there may be use for us to get those mortars in the field as well. Right now, they're using the quick stow concept, which you're dragging the mortar behind, or you still have to emplace it on the ground. We think that the solution that we offer gives you greater speed, accuracy, and mobility.
Now, sir, as a junior officer, many years ago, I remember my mortar guys I brought to Korea, and very postage stamp size impact area. And I remember briefing battalion commander, brigade commander, and sometimes the division commander. But before we went hot, every senior officer left the firing positions because of the fact. You, as a senior officer, are you going to stick around if this is the mortar you're witnessing?
I had no problem sticking around with this mortar at both Striker live fires, and I didn't have any problem with the predecessor mortar either when I was a brigade commander.
Oh, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you again.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, so this kind of concludes the presentation. Like I said, don't be disgruntled because of the small audience. Everything is taped professionally by the most professional filmographer in Huntsville, Alabama. And we're going to have everything posted. We'll have the charts available. So we'll stay abreast. I owe you guys a bunch of presentations from the government and DOV folks. I'll try to get some of Bob Coker's stuff because I think that was pretty meaningful. But one, I appreciate your cooperation and partnership in starting this effort of innovation. As you can see, right now it's a very common word. It's thrown out there, but what we're going to do together is help make that happen. And that's what AUSA is committed to do. Thank you so much.